These days, it feels like gaming is just for the rich. Everything about PC building is expensive, even the stuff that isn't really good enough to play modern games at anything above medium settings, and the games themselves are ridiculous. Rest assured though, there is still a whole world of cheap PC games out there, from the free-to-play titles that dominate the Steam most played list, to indies, to modern classics. I decided to look at some of the games you can play on PC for virtually no money, and I'm doing so on a pre-built workstation PC that cost under £100. A decade ago, this Dell Precision 5810 workstation would have been worth at least $1,200 US. I bought it on sale last year on eBay for £51, or about 70 USD. It's a great budget platform with plenty of potential, but without some upgrades, it's not even as capable as a Steam Deck. Mine came with a Xeon E5-1620V3, which, despite its highfalutin name, big socket and professional Xeon branding, is really just a quad-core Haswell i7. It did come with 16GB of DDR4 in quad channel, and an actual factual PCI Express graphics card. The model in question here is another familiar GPU hiding behind professional branding, this time a Quadro K2200 4GB. If you look up the card on Tech PowerUp, you'll see it's the same architecture and core configuration as the GTX 750 Ti, which was an old favourite of budget gamers in the 2010s, and while fairly obsolete nowadays, it held on pretty well, up until quite recently. Now, you could easily improve on all of this. The 5810 is a socket 2011 V3 platform, meaning it can accept Haswell and Broadwell E-based Xeons all the way up to 22 cores, and there are cheap, high-performing 6 and 8 core CPUs that are more than capable of driving a modern mid-tier GPU or a previous generation flagship, but that's something I'm going to leave for another time. One thing I didn't get with my 5810 was storage. This isn't uncommon, it's a professional machine, and many businesses getting rid of their old PCs will destroy their hard drives to prevent sensitive data getting where it shouldn't. Most systems of this age don't natively support NVMe or even M.2 drives at all, and while there may be a workaround for that, instead I'm using a couple of A400 2.5-inch SATA SSDs that were kindly provided by Kingston. These are inexpensive, versatile drives that are way faster than pretty much any hard drive you'll find, and great for use with legacy systems like these. Modern games can be pretty big downloads, and even stuff like GTA 5 weighs in at over 100 gigs, so I wouldn't recommend going for less than the 480GB model, and you'll often find that larger 1 and 2TB drives work out better value. My operating system of choice is Windows 10. It's free to download and install, and if you're bothered by the activation reminder in the corner, you can get a key online, but mine just activated straight away, which is often the case with second-hand PCs that have previously had Windows installed on them. Failing that, I could have gone with a free Linux distro like Bazite OS, but I'll be covering that in another video coming soon. I've got to admit, part of me feels a bit guilty about making this video. After all, free-to-play games are notoriously predatory, luring you in with their low system requirements and zero upfront cost, hooking you with addictive gameplay loops before letting the microtransactions sink their teeth into your bank account. Still, that's the way of the world, I guess. Don't forget to check out the link to Kingston SSDs in the description. CS2 is one of the most popular games in the world, free-to-play or otherwise. It's a pretty competitive place to be, and you could find yourself falling into the trap of the PC upgrade cycle. This machine gave me 75 FPS at low settings, even with FSR turned off, but in this context that still doesn't feel quite fluid enough. With a better PC I'd have a better experience, and maybe then I'd be a better player. I just need to upgrade the CPU, and maybe get some faster RAM, and of course a better graphics card, and then I need to tune everything with apps like XTU and MSI Afterburner, and actually this platform's a dead end now. What I really need is an X3D chip and an RTX 50i. Well, 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 if it isn't the world's biggest video game, 2 weeks. Epic's mega game is not only the most popular free-to-play battle royale out there, it also scales across a wide range of systems. You could run it in DX12 mode at 4K with all the various Lumen and Nanite features enabled, and see it bring even a $4,000 battle station to its knees. Or you can run it in performance mode and get a playable FPS on even this decade-old workstation. This is because Fortnite is as much a sales platform for the Unreal Engine as it is for character skins. However, in recent years it's garnered a reputation in the PC tech corner of YouTube as being a bit on the stuttery side. The graph in the corner shows spikes every time the game stutters, and as you can see, it's quite a lot, especially when first loading up the game, but I find it persists even into the second game and beyond. In performance mode, the game doesn't look like $1 billion, but at least it plays well overall. The average on this PC is approximately 90 FPS, even without using upscaling, but the stutters do ruin the experience somewhat. The bad news is, pretty much any cheap pre-built PC won't have enough horsepower to handle Marvel rivals. Older GPUs like the K2200 and integrated GPUs like Intel's UHD graphics simply aren't enough to handle Emma Frost's ample polygons. The good news is, Overwatch 2 is basically the same game, looks just as good for the most part, and runs on a potato. Plus, if you're not really playing character shooters for the shooting, you can goon over some of the characters here too, I guess. Overwatch 2 rather controversially added virtually nothing to Overwatch 1, and even removed content compared to the original, but it is free to play now at least, and the 5810 and its ancient CPU and GPU can still drive over 70 FPS at 1080p low settings. There are plenty of other free-to-play, low-spec games out there waiting to take your money, but assuming you can afford to spend at least the cost of a takeaway pizza on gaming every month, however, there are options for the broke PC gamer that are a little less predatory. The one solution to all your gaming needs, which also happens to be another one of the reasons why the gaming industry always seems to be teetering on the edge of a cliff, is Xbox Game Pass. This is a rental service with dozens of top-quality games to choose from, some of them brand spanking new and requiring a very expensive PC to actually play, but many of them are well within the scope of a cheap old PC like this one. Since Microsoft owns Bethesda, who owns the entirety of the Elder Scrolls and Fallout franchises, Game Pass is home to enough in-depth RPG goodness to keep you going for months, if not years. I decided I didn't want to make this part of the video all about Bethesda, however, so I boiled the options down to one. Skyrim Classic is one of those legendary games that you probably don't need me to tell you about, but perhaps there's an outside chance you haven't played it yet. Or maybe you last played it on a smart fridge or an Amazon speaker and wanted to get a real PC gamer experience instead. Unfortunately, this system can't quite maintain 60 FPS at 1080p Ultra. You might want to drop down to high or medium to keep things smooth, but then again, Skyrim isn't competitive, so maybe you can live with 40 to 50 FPS. As if Microsoft's first-party titles weren't enough, Game Pass also includes access to EA Play, which expands the catalogue to include titles like EAFC, F1, WRC, and some with actual names. I went with Star Wars Battlefront 2, which is a game I didn't play at all in the last 8 years, but have been really quite enjoying lately. Also, if you're not into the whole game rental thing, it's dirt cheap on Steam right now. At 1080p low, the Quadro can't quite keep up, and the average FPS is just 50, but if you're happy to use some resolution scaling to drop the amount of detail in exchange for more frames, you should be able to get a slightly blurry 60 FPS with no trouble. Game Pass is also a great place to discover indie titles, and it's where I found another underground gem you probably haven't heard of: Grand Theft Automobile. GTA 5 is notoriously scalable, so much so that our friend El Crispo likes to use it to test out old Windows 7 era graphics cards and useless display adapters. I like to use GTA 5 to indulge in a little light hunting, and by light I mean a 50 caliber semi-automatic rifle. At 1080p high I can do that at somewhere around 45 FPS, and if I wanted to go any higher I could drop to normal and everything would still look just fine. Of course, Game Pass isn't for everyone. It's included in my ISP package, so I don't pay any extra for it. However, I actually cancelled my original Game Pass sub because I was fed up of their terrible launcher and how it kept making me reinstall games when I changed hardware. Instead, I started putting my money into something a little more random, but a little more permanent. Humble choice is £11.99 a month, and for that you get a selection of curated Steam and GOG keys. If you've ever bought a random key bundle off eBay or some sketchy website in the past, you may assume that you're going to get some dog shit that only exists to pad out the number of unplayed games in your Steam backlog. And honestly, I can't promise you're going to like every game in every bundle, or that they'll all run on this PC. However, in the last few years, I've picked up some incredible low-spec friendly games in the bundle. Here's just a few of them. Warhammer 40k Boltgun looks like it should run on a Pentium and an S3 Verge, but it's a bit more demanding than that. Thankfully, its pixelated art style is quite forgiving of low resolutions, so if 1080p is too much for your graphics card to handle, you can drop it down to 900p or lower without even really noticing. I found 1080p was mostly playable at 60 FPS, though at times the graphics do overwhelm the poor old Quadro, and we see dips into the 50s and even 40s. Hopefully, for your own sake, you're not old enough to remember Jet Set Radio on the Dreamcast. If you are, how's your back holding up? Bomb Rush Cyberfunk wears its JSR influence on its sleeve. It not only borrows from that 25-year-old game's aesthetic, but a lot of the gameplay too. It definitely feels like it could run on 2000s era hardware. This PC can manage 1080p max settings without even breaking a sweat. I've featured Dredge a lot on this channel lately. For one thing, its basic models and untextured polygons aren't hard for any PC to handle, and it can run at 1080 60 FPS on almost anything. It's also about the creepiest fishing game I've come across, which might not be saying much because it's not a genre I actively go looking for. Like the last game, performance is hardly relevant as the CPU and GPU are basically chilling. But, okay, perhaps £12 a month for some random games is still too rich for your blood. How about some games you're already paying for? If you have an Amazon Prime subscription, you get a free bunch of keys every month. Not all of them are great or even good, but some are amazing and it's worth logging on once a month to claim them. I'm not going to feature those games in this video, however. Instead, I'm talking about Luna, Amazon's cloud gaming service. The base subscription is included with Amazon Prime and includes a small number of games that can be streamed, which is nice, I guess, and you can upgrade to Luna Plus, which gives you access to a bigger library of included games and lets you buy other games, which is less nice. Why do I pay a subscription just to allow me to buy a game? But I digress. The most appealing part for me is that it can also synchronize your EA, Ubisoft and GOG accounts. This means you stream games you already own on these stores, running them on Amazon's servers instead of your local crappy PC. It's not 100% compatible, however. Cyberpunk 2077 is in my GOG library, but doesn't appear in my Luna library, I guess due to licensing. But hey, if you've managed to collect a bunch of free games from various promos around the internet, you don't have a PC that can play them properly, and have a reasonably solid internet connection, this is a better-than-nothing solution. I've tested 3 games on Luna, the first being Death Stranding, which is included with the base Luna subscription right now. This game is actually quite relevant in 2025, as the sequel has recently hit PS5, and will probably come to the PC later on. There's a hidden cost to game streaming, that of high-speed internet. The UK isn't exactly on the cutting edge of global broadband speeds, and personally I'm lucky to see more than 5 to 7 megabytes a second. Because the image on screen is being streamed over the internet, your connection speed can affect both latency and image quality. It seemed up to the task when I recorded this footage. Everything remained pretty clear and crisp, and the Amazon server was able to drive a smooth experience even with the settings cranked up. Those servers aren't really powerful enough for Star Wars Outlaws, however. At least, not at the kinds of quality you'd expect if you just saw the trailers or Digital Foundry deep dives. This is one of the raft of recent games that relies on ray tracing, a notoriously heavy lighting method which I just made a whole 1-hour video about on my new channel, Iceberg Lore. The Tesla T4 GPU in the Amazon machines is capable of hardware-accelerated ray tracing, but it defaults to running this game at the low preset with DLSS quality upscaling. As a result, the game looks okay, not that impressive, but at least it works, which would not be the case if we were using the PC's own graphics card. And performance is actually pretty great. I didn't notice any latency, but I did notice one of the downsides that are peculiar to streaming: MPEG compression. It's going to be hard for you to appreciate because my video is also compressed, but as I'm driving, the landscape ahead of me is starting to degrade into a blocky, featureless mess. This would only get worse at lower internet speeds or busier times of day. Which was even more apparent in my final game, Watch Dogs Legion. For one thing, despite being an early RT title, this game is still a bit much for the Amazon servers. I set overall quality to medium with more than the basic amount of RT, and it only managed to complete the benchmark at around 35 FPS. This can be remedied just by turning ray tracing off, which wasn't possible in Outlaws. However, the other problem is overall streaming quality. While I was recording, someone else was watching Netflix, and that caused the overall bandwidth to be reduced, and so image quality got visibly softer. This was probably the best case scenario. It's just a bit blurry, most noticeable on text and the user interface. At worst, it could devolve into a mess of 240p graphics, heavy compression artifacts, and lag. Such is the downside to cloud gaming, and why it might not be for everyone. If you're surprised at how playable all this is on an old workstation PC, don't be. The techie side of YouTube does tend to get a bit doom and gloom, Chicken Little about the whole PC gaming industry these days. New games are very demanding, and it feels like companies like Nvidia are using this fact to squeeze gamers for every penny. However, chances are most of us could survive on old hardware in a pinch. Many popular free-to-play games are designed to take money from as many people as possible, and that means running on a wide variety of weaker hardware. Some of the best games ever made are from a time when this PC would have been more than adequate to the task, and even if you're my age, chances are you've only played a fraction of them. Check out this video from a couple of years ago where I tested some absolute classics on a workstation PC not too far off from this one. Thanks for watching, kindly do the usual YouTube things if you feel so inclined, and I'll see you next time.